It's 11:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. And you're on with Victoria and Mike. And for Mike, we need to say East Coast Mortgage Lenders is a licensed Florida mortgage lender and servicer, NMLS number 353429. And very pleasant good morning, folks.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. What happened to our lead-in music, Greg?
You got it. This is all brand new, huh?
No, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it come on. But anyway, hey, good morning. My name is Mike Pollis. I'm with East Coast Mortgage Lenders. We are licensed mortgage lenders on the Treasure Coast, right here in Palm City. NMLS number 301789. That's my personal NMLS number. Supposed to say that. So, good morning.
Good morning. So what's been going on in the mortgage business, Mike? I know you've been busy and I know rates are changing. Is it affecting us?
Yeah, it kind of is. All through this COVID crisis, the interest rates came down to record lows and now they're kind of creeping their way back up. I'm monitoring the 10-year T-bill as we speak here because that's what mortgage interest rates are based on. And we've had a pretty significant increase in the 10-year T-bill. That's driving up the mortgage interest rates as well. So yeah, we're heading upwards, but it's not a bad thing. It's we've been going 1,000 miles an hour with all the refinances, and this certainly has slowed down the refinances to some extent. It has not slowed down the purchases. I'll tell you what has slowed down the purchases is the lack of inventory.
And that's correct. I mean, I'm having the hardest time. I'm working with several people and I mean, we're that inventory from everything, and just don't think it's just a purchase, it's rentals also. It's just everything is going so quickly. The other problem that we have with the inventory, as you know, a lot of these programs offer that we can get, that the seller can pay for some of the closing costs and prepaids of our buyers. And if we do that on top of making an offer, a lot of times everybody's going over asking price, not at asking price. And then we're having a hard time getting those closing costs that are needed for that buyer. So that's hurting us just a little bit also.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing on my end. I mean, it's just like every transaction is a bidding war. You kind of have to earn the right to get a contract nowadays. It's not just finding the house, but it's something that you have to move fast on. So if something comes your way that you're happy with or satisfied with, you really have to move fast. That's what I'm finding. Because as soon as these properties are on the market, there's multiple offers on them. So the best offer that you can present, and most of the time that is a full price offer without any closing concessions from the seller, will win the day. Most of the times cash will win the day, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing too. So what I was trying to explain to one of our mutual clients that we're working with is, you've pre-qualified them to a certain dollar amount. And if I go to that dollar amount and then ask for closing costs and prepaids, a percentage of it, then we kind of lose out on our bid. So I'm trying to find things that are a little less money, so I can make the price a little bit higher to include those closing costs and prepaids in there without having, the seller to lose any money at all. But my problem is trying to find these lower prices anymore because our price points are really going up.
Yeah, and it's really kind of starting to burst at the seam here appraisal wise, because when we get an appraisal on a property, appraisers have to use historical sales, obviously sales that have already happened, have already closed. When every new sale is setting a new record for the sale price, it's really becoming challenging to get these properties to appraise in. So if you do find a house out there, say for $200,000, and you're interested in buying it and you need the seller to pay closing costs, you may have to come in over asking. And then we run the risk of the appraisal not coming in. Because remember, the appraiser is going to use sales from, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, 6 months ago. So those sales were obviously lower and they hurt our ability to finance in some of these closing costs. So there are some definite challenges. Not saying it's impossible, but it certainly isn't helping the situation.
Well, my other challenge that we're having also is you say to me, Victoria, I want to put my house on the market for sale. Well, when I go and I look at the comps, and like you say, I go back at least 6 months ago, because that's what the appraisers will do. I still have the prices are from low to high. And when I look at it, I go, well, there's some pendings in there that could change the market, but they haven't closed yet. So everything I'm doing, I have to kind of squeak it in there and tell my seller, we might be able to go at this a little higher price here, but I'm not sure until these other ones close. And if we're not seeing any activity, we're definitely going to have to make a change.
Yeah.
But that's my other problem that I'm having, is trying to price out these homes on the market.
Yeah, most people don't realize that when you purchase a home, you have to come in not only with your down payment funds, but you also have to come up with monies for closing costs and your escrow startups. They're called prepaid items. Now, those two items, closing costs and prepaid items, can be almost as much and sometimes even more than what the down payment is. So if you get into, say, an FHA loan that only requires 3.5% down, it may be another 3.5% to 4% in closing costs and prepaid. So I'm seeing that there's a lot of people out there that can come up with the money for the down payment, but they don't realize what the closing costs and prepaids are. And that's what we're experiencing now in a couple of customers. And that's why we were talking about the sellers assisting towards some of these closing costs. And that is allowable, but in this market, it's becoming less and less realistic. So there are some programs out there that do offer even 100% financing. So then all you need to do is come in with your closing costs and prepaids. That's a VA loan. VA loans are by far the best financing options out there in the market. You could do 100% financing. There's no mortgage insurance. It's a wonderful, wonderful deal. And if you're a veteran, you're foolish if you're not taking advantage of your VA benefits right now, because you earn them, and it is a wonderful program. Some other programs are available at 100% financing too. Now, they're not as easy to use, but we do have a program that's actually sponsored through the USDA. And you always think the USDA sponsors food products, but no, they also do some housing loans too, and they do 100% financing. Now, the problem with using those types of programs, it's meant for financing underserved communities, AKA rural communities. So you can't use those types of programs to finance in downtown Port St. Lucie or Stewart, but you can use it to finance somewhere maybe out in Okeechobee, Indiantown, maybe some areas up in Indian River County. It's a wonderful program, and it has a lot of the benefits that the VA program offers as well.
Yeah, and that's the problem that we ran into before, is just trying to find the areas that are approved for the USDA. That's what we have found in the past. Let's touch a little bit on what you talked about, prepaids. A lot of people get confused with this, and a lot of people say, why are my closing costs so high? And I run into this all the time, Mike. But I try to explain to them, when you're including your prepaids. Now, what is a prepaid? That means I got to go out and I got to buy my homeowner's insurance 100%. So if my homeowner's insurance is $2,300, that means I've got to pay for that at the time of closing or ahead of time. Correct, Mike? Those prepaid.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big chunk of change in today's market. Insurance is expensive.
It is.
It's quite a number that you have to account for.
Now let's take that $2,300 and let's divide that by 12 months, because now we have to have an escrow, as we call it, because you escrow your taxes and your insurance in your mortgage payment. Mm-hmm. So now you're kind of paying for it maybe 1.5 times. So it depends on the time of the year you're closing, is how much money they're going to take in their escrow at that time. Correct, Mike?
Yeah. See, it's a very complicated calculation to come up with the amount of escrows we're going to collect. But typically what we would do, insurance is easy. Like you said, you have to pay for the first year up in advance, because what happens is you pay for the first year in advance. Okay, so you're paying that whole nut for the insurance up front. Then we have to start collecting in our monthly payment towards next year's next year's insurance and next year's taxes. But So we're gonna skip a month before your first payment. So we have to collect the month that you're in and the next month, and we collect 1 month in buffer just in case your insurance goes up. So we collect a year in advance to pay your premium, then 3 extra months in insurance. Now, taxes are a different animal. You're right. That could vary significantly depending on what month you close. But the long and short of it, it's going to come out to roughly 4 months that you have to come up with for your taxes, because you're going to get a credit back from the seller for the period of the year that they owned it. But long and short, we're going to collect 4 months, and not to bore you, but it's November and December, and the month you close, and then the month you skip, and that's why we collect 4 months.
So
that
this
all goes
is,
into your escrow.
is this PITI what you're talking about in the mortgages then?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've been listening.
Well, yeah. I've actually been taking some notes here.
Now, the interesting part about this whole thing that people 100% get confused with, even though you explain it to them many, many times over, homeowners insurance is always 1 year ahead. You always pay it 1 year ahead. And property taxes are always 1 year behind. So when we go to a closing, this is what people don't understand, that we're giving a credit to the buyer for the months you lived in that home. And then you're responsible as a new buyer to pay those taxes at the end of the year. But you're getting a credit for the months that they had in there. So what's going to happen while we have the closing, you're going to get a tax bill in between time, because everybody does. And we tell them, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it because it's going to be paid by the new buyer. But we always get the old sellers calling us and saying, what do I do with this tax bill? What do I do? But you don't have to worry about it, because now it's the responsibility of the new buyer to pay those taxes.
Yeah, exactly. And let me interject one thing. Our listeners may have a lot of questions on this because we just are well into the new year, coming into tax time. So if anyone has any questions about what we're talking about, or any other real estate questions, please give us a call at 772-340-1590. Again, it's 772-340-1590. So also, what we should probably touch on is the reassessment of properties. What happens when you purchase a property, you typically would file a homestead exemption, which gives you a little bit of a break on the taxes. But the most important aspect of homestead is it protects your property from any kind of lawsuits, and it caps your increases. So what I mean when I say caps your increases in taxes is it caps your assessments. So once you buy the property, chances are the following year, they're going to reassess the property to market value. So you could experience a bit of a tax increase for that next year. But after they reassess the property, if you have the property homesteaded, then your assessment is capped at 3% a year. So what's that going to do? It's going to, if your property doubles in value in 1 year, it's going to cap your taxes from doubling. It's going to cap it. It doesn't cap the non-ad valorem, which is the trash pickups, the water, that type of thing.
The swales. Get your swales in front of your home.
Correct, but it will cap your regular taxes, your school taxes, your police and fire rescue, that kind of thing. So it's very important to homestead your property, because it's going to keep you from being taxed out of your home if your property continues to increase like they have been.
Well, you have to close before December 31st. So you have to close before the end of the year, and you have to file before March 1st.
Yeah, and what's nice about Florida is they're not going to reassess your property until the following year. So generally, you inherit whatever is on that property currently. So if you have a person who's been in that property for a very long period of time, and their taxes were artificially held down by the homestead cap, then you get the benefit of that November. But just warning you, the following November, that could all change. So you have to budget for that as well.
The other thing you got to take into consideration is portability. So what you have is, when you've lived in your home, when they came back, because our homestead used to be $25,000. that they would give you a credit for. So if your home was assessed at $100,000 for tax value, you would take $25,000 off of that, and they'd only tax you on $75,000. Then they came along and they said, okay, we're going to give you an additional $25,000, which was lovely. Plus, we're going to give you a thing called portability. Portability means the time you've been in that home. They do have a formula. I don't know how it works, but it does work, because we've had a client that got an additional $16,000. We have another one with $89,000, but it's never going to be zero. And that's what they tell you. So if your portability has gotten so high because you've lived there for so long, your tax value will never be zero, but you will get a substantial discount when you move to that new property in the state of Florida that you might want. And you might say, hey, my taxes will be so much higher. But with the portability, it gives you that flexibility of checking it out to see that your taxes could be a lot lower.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is a time limit from the time you sell your property to the time you buy another property to port over those savings. Am I correct?
I think and it could be 2 years, but we'd have to check on that.
Yeah, that means that all of our listeners out there, if you sold a property and you're sitting on the sidelines, maybe renting a place, maybe living with some family, maybe you just can't find a property because that's how the market is right now. But if you did, then you might want to take advantage of purchasing something before that portability expires. And also for those who did buy last year, um, from my understanding is it's a separate application for the portability. You have to complete an application for the homestead exemption, and you have to file an application for the portability of it. Is that correct?
I think there is. I think there is something on the application that uh, that's asked about portability, but a lot of people don't even understand what it is, so they overlook it. So please don't overlook your portability if you are making a change or moving.
Yes, and one thing I just wanted to touch on, because we said this numerous times on this show, is the the inventory is so limited and is so difficult to actually get under contract right now. I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of different options out there that may help you. Maybe you might not find the house exactly to your dreams, but maybe you can convert it into your dreams by using a renovation loan. Now, a renovation loan is one where we'll lend you funds to not only purchase the property, but we'll also fund the renovations of it. So let's say you find a house. Maybe it's a little older than what you wanted. Maybe you wanted to have something with a newer roof because we're coming into hurricane season. Maybe you wanted to get something with a newer kitchen. But why not consider a renovation loan where you can purchase the property and turn it into exactly what you want? There's a lot of different options out there. We have a Fannie Mae program. It's called the Fannie Mae Homestyle program. That's a conventional program. So you can put as little as 5% down, and we can finance in the renovation costs, up to 95% of the renovation costs. And FHA has an interesting program. They have actually two programs. One is what we used to call the Streamline program, and that's a relatively easy program to get into. What we do is you can put 3.5% down to purchase the property, and then we can finance in all the renovation costs. And what we'll do is we'll actually add the renovation cost to the appraisal. So let's say you're buying an older home, and you want to put a kitchen in, we're going to give it value for that kitchen, and we can finance that whole thing. And let's say, as in a lot of cases, you add $50,000 to a kitchen, maybe it only adds $30,000 worth of value. We'll actually allow you to go 110% over and above what the renovation costs are. So with that type of program, we're less likely to get into appraisal issues. So it's an interesting concept. Also, little trick of the trade. Let's say you're buying a property with FHA financing. Let's say it underappraises. If you switch that to an FHA loan, a FHA renovation loan, a 401k, then we can finance some minimal item. Maybe you want to put a $4,000 roof on, or maybe some new air conditioning. You can finance that into the program. And now, even though it underappraised, we can do it because it's the 401k program. So there's a lot of different interesting ways to use that program. It's got a lot of benefits to it, and people should consider it.
But we still have to qualify with our debt ratio for the higher payment, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in all cases, if it's going to be owner occupied, you have to qualify for it. That's the requirements from the government now. All of those no income verification loans are gone. There are some other interesting programs out there that are mainly geared towards like self-employed borrowers. Self-employed borrowers tend to maybe take some deductions and get a little aggressive on their tax returns. Maybe they don't qualify because they write off a lot of their income. And we do have programs for that. Unfortunately, not renovation loans, but we do have new subprime loans. We now call them non-QM, non-qualified mortgages. But we have programs that can use your bank statement deposits as income. All right, we can use what's called asset depletion. Let's say you're sitting on, some nice retirement funds. We could use those funds, divide those funds by 36 months, and we can use that as income. We have programs that only require 1 year's tax return. So and we're coming up on tax time. So, if you're self-employed and you usually take off, a lot of deductions, and this program might be very good for you because you just have to file 1 year of good solid tax returns. We use that as your income. So it's really important, especially given the time of the year we're in. We have programs that will take you for if you only have 1 day out of bankruptcy. So you filed bankruptcy and got discharged yesterday, you can apply and get a mortgage today. If you are a non-resident citizen, or actually can't say citizen, but if you're a non-resident alien and you have an ITIN number, which is just a tax ID number, not a social security, I have a program for that. So there's a lot of different options out there for you today, not just traditional FHA and conventional. There are a lot of programs out there.
And let's touch on a couple of things too, where we talk about that. So we have some people that had purchased homes at a lot less value, and now the value has gone up so greatly. So now they're talking about maybe selling their homes. So some of the homes are homesteaded and some of the homes are not homesteaded. So if you have a non-homesteaded home and you want to sell that property and you want to exchange it for other properties, we need to do a thing called a 1031 exchange. So you don't have to pay capital gains on it. So that's what we've been working on lately too. It's a company, it's an actual company that you have to hire that will do the 1031 exchange. Your closings are going to be exactly the same. The buyers, it doesn't affect them in any way. They don't have to pay any extra money, but it gives you that flexibility of being able to get that capital gains, which is a big chunk of change in some people, then able to invest it in other like-kind properties, as they call it.
Yeah, and those types of programs are for investment properties only, because typically you don't pay capital gains on an owner-occupied property because you've probably lived there long enough to qualify for the tax exemption.
250,000 per person.
Yeah,
husband and wife, 500,000 total.
So if you're sitting on an investment property, or maybe you inherited something that's just been sitting there for a while, you can use this type of program to to delay the payment of the capital gains tax on that. So it's an excellent program.
And in some cases, it's not even worth it. I was working with another gal and I said, by the time for this one particular property, they bought it, renovated it, and it is worth a lot more money after the renovations, but they're not going to really net that much money out of it at the end of the day. A lot, but not a whole lot, not in the hundred thousands, maybe 10 or 20. And sometimes it's not even worth it to do the 1031 exchange. You're better off just paying your capital gains at that time, because you get to write off all your costs and expenses also. So if you bought a property for 100,000 and it cost you another $20,000 to renovate it, you can take that off the cost. And the other thing people have to realize also is you can write off your costs. That would be your cost and your fees, and it would be my cost and the fees that we have to charge also. So all of those become a tax write-off for you also at the end. So you don't pay as much in a capital gains.
Right. And some of these 1031 exchanges, the companies can charge you, a pretty hefty fee. I mean, it's affordable compared to paying taxes on a couple $100,000. But you do have to weigh what the cost and the rewards are. Now, the good thing is, that these are tools that are out there. But if you're prone to thinking that the tax rates are going up, which most people think they're going to come sooner versus later, then there might be some benefit of actually biting the bullet and paying that capital gains now at a lower rate than just postponing it and paying it a higher rate down the road.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was telling them.
yeah, so again, you have to just talk to your tax advisor, make an educated decision, and see which way is best for you.
Correct. And that's something that somebody needs to do. They get a little confused, but you need to go to the person that does your taxes, because you need, between the 1031 exchange people and your tax CPA or whoever you use, needs to help you to see what tax bracket you're in.
Yeah, and this is what I tell people. So we're here to guide you through the whole process. We're not here just to make a single sale. You know, you're very knowledgeable about the exchange program, 1031 exchange. You can give some solid advice to people when it comes to that. A lot of people aren't knowledgeable about that. So we're here to help. We're here to guide you through the whole process and make the right decisions, not just the decision that's right for us today. So again, we're here to help.
Well, let's talk about decisions. I recently, there was somebody and I had sold them down the line, and they decided to go with some type of discount brokerage company and thought that they were doing a good deal, and they've lost, I'm telling you, between 40 and $50,000 in their pocket. And I'm amazed to think that somebody's worried about a percent or two and not really working with somebody that's a total professional to lose that kind of money. It amazes me.
I am so much in agreement with you, Victoria, because I can tell you another little horror story I just went through. Actually, it was a great story for my buyers. They actually decided to go through an auction house to buy a house. And they bought this property through the auction. They got under contract. The auction house added their fee on top of the price of the house. So I think the original price started off at somewhere 190, 195, under 200,000. So the auction house added their fee, which is another 10% onto that. So I believe our price was somewhere around 225 or so after you added all that. That appraisal came in at 265. Now, if you would have been dealing with, instead of an auction house, a knowledgeable, experienced realtor like you, then that property would have never sold under value. And that seller lost a lot of money. It was great for my buyer, don't get me wrong, but that seller really left a lot of cash on the table because they weren't dealing with somebody experienced. And the downside to my borrower was that they were dealing with an auction house, not a licensed realtor. Yeah, they got a good deal on the house, but the problem was they had no one to help them all through the transaction, and they were totally lost and confused through the whole transaction. So that's why we're here. We're here to educate you and help you through the process.
And Mike, you got to be careful, because you got to make sure they're going to give you clear title. I've known people that have gone to auctions before, and there were outstanding debts that followed them that they had to pay off. That they have to guarantee you that you're going to get clear title on that property, and that you're
Yeah.
not going to have to pay any other fees.
Yeah, see, a lot of auctions, there's different types of auctions out there. There's some auctions that you have to come prepared, cash in hand or certified check, where you're ready to purchase that property today. And that's a risky proposition. You might be able to get a great deal on that property, but you may end up with nightmares down the road. There are other auctions where, they do allow you to go in with a financing contingency and get financing on the property. And that's what my customers did. And in that case, we're going to review that title. If we don't have a clear, good title, we're not going to lend on it, and no lender would. So, and that's where the lender and the borrower are on the same page, on the same side, because we're going to look out for us as a lender, but when it comes to title, we're also looking out for you too, because we're both on the same side with that.
Well, I've
Okay,
sold,
so I got a question for both of you guys. And okay, so who's guaranteeing this thing? If you were to go into one of these things, uh, who in the world is guaranteeing it? Is it a title company?
a title company. Yes,
Oh,
they'll have a title company. The auction company says we guarantee you clear title. So they have a title company that they use that they close through. But we have some, Greg, that are out there that do not. I've had people that have bought in an auction where they weren't even allowed to even walk on the property outside, not even allowed to walk on the outside of the
Yes,
property.
some of them are kind of like storage wars.
Yes, that's exactly what they're like.
that's great.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, you're spending a lot of money and you have no clue what's inside that house at all. No clue.
Yeah, and the good thing is when you go through an experienced realtor like Victoria, you're going to get a inspection period on the property where you have the right to go through that house and go through every aspect of it, get a home inspector. And I highly suggest you do that because then you know what you're getting into. Now, it's different if you're an experienced contractor, you've gone through renovations, you know you're going to renovate a property. But for the average person, you want to make sure that you're protected. You have the right to inspect that property and find out if that property has any issues with it.
You
Well,
can do that.
again, if you were getting, I'm confused on this because if you go through, say, one of these auction things, I mean, don't they have to supply the home inspections?
No, no, you do.
Why?
Because even when you purchase a home, you as a buyer pays, you do your due diligence. That's part of your due diligence to make sure that that property is in the shape that you want, you know, you're happy with. That's why we have those as is contracts. In an as is contract, we've had two kinds of contracts. Originally we had contracts where there was a percentage in the contract that the seller would pay for certain repair work. One was under termites, the other one was under repairs. But after we had our downfall, they changed to all these as is contracts. So I can sell you a home and I can say you can have your home inspection and you pay the money, and those can run from $300, $400, $500, $600 depending on who you go with and what kind of report you want. Once you get that report, you can say, what Victoria, I want the seller to pay for this, 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 and this. We can request it, but that seller can say no, that they don't want to pay for anything. So they don't have to do any work at all. Now, what happens at that point? You have the right to cancel the contract and get 100% of your deposit back. But that fee you've lost that you've used for your home inspection, you've paid for that.
Right. And it's also good, it's very important, once you're in that home inspection period, to get a reputable home inspector. And that's where Victoria can guide you and give you some recommendations. Because there are good ones, there's bad ones. They're not all created equal.
That's right. And I've had clients where I've given them some recommendations and they went with who they wanted to because they were less money, again, less money. And they missed so many things. It was pretty scary, pretty scary.
Yep.
I tell my home inspectors, I almost threaten them, you better look at it with a fine tooth comb. I'd rather them find something than not find something.
Yeah, and most of them do earn their keep, and they do find something. But again, some are better than others. And one other thing that's very important is when you're getting a home inspection on a property that you're considering buying, you have to make sure that you get with either a 4-point inspection or a wind mitigation inspection, because that's the first thing the insurance company is going to ask you for, because that's how they rate what the premium is going to be. They have to assess what the risk of insuring that property, and they're going to request that they get this wind mitigation, because that tells you if it's does it have shutters, the wind load, the
roof,
other roof trusses fastened down with hurricane straps.
The other thing is, let's explain that to people because they get confused with that also. Not all properties need a 4-point. It depends on the age of the property because it goes a little more in depth with the electrical and plumbing and the structure. But a wind mitigation is something almost all homes need unless they're new homes. If they're newer homes, then we don't need it because they're already up to the standards of the code. So what they're looking for is, like Mike said, how is that roof strapped down? How are your windows? You know, do you have hurricane shutters? If you do, are they rated? Because they have to be rated or you're not going to get a credit. If there is one little piece, little opening of glass anywhere in your home, but you have everything else covered, you get zero credit. Zero credit. Everything needs to be covered. Your number
Isn't
one thing
isn't
that gives you the
everything
greatest.
uh,
Go ahead.
isn't everything like hurricane shutters and stuff? Isn't that all Miami-Dade standard rated after our hurricanes?
No, they're not. And they ask you if you have papers on them or something that indicates how they are rated, your hurricane shutters.
Wow. Okay.
Well, you have to remember that, some of these new hurricane codes only came into effect, 2005, 2000, some of them. Building codes changed around 2000. Um, so, houses that are built prior to this, could possibly have older hurricane straps, older quality construction, older windows. Um, so that's going to affect the premium. Also, the type of construction. CBS block typically is lower in price for insurance than a frame built house.
Which I think is discrimination.
That is true because I had a frame house when I first moved here in Florida back in 1994. That house is still standing, never had any hurricane damage. And I tell you what, a wood frame house, uh, I thought it was very, very efficient to run. My utility bills were much lower in that house than my newer home. That's a CBS construction. So there are some benefits of a frame home, and I do agree with Victoria. I think they get a bad rap sometimes because that house stood the test of time.
Well, when we used to do the real estate TV shows, we used to have engineers on and we used to discuss the block. I still see him sitting on the couch and we were talking about it. And he said, well, Victoria, a wood frame home breathes better. When you're in a storm, it moves better. With a block home has moisture in it because they have to use cement mortar to put it together. And a lot of times when you feel a little achy in a block home, it's because of that. It's because that it has too much moisture inside of it. So it's interesting what they said. The number one thing is, if your roof is going to go, everything else is going to go. They said they don't care if it's block frame or what it is. Your roof and your windows are very important. And that's why a lot of people get upset when they say they have to get a building permit to change out a door or a window. It's only because they got to make sure that they're put in properly because of the hurricanes.
And this all goes hand in hand with what we started the show off with, and that's inventory problems. Again, if you're looking for that newer home that with the impact glass, with the newer roof, with the extra hurricane straps on the roof trusses, again, that might not be available in today's market. It's hard to find a house out there. It's hard to get under contract on the house. So that's where we go back to some of these renovation loans. You can use these renovation loans to make these changes, to build it, not only build it to the way you want it, cosmetic wise, if you want that new kitchen, for example, but you can use these renovation funds to put a new roof on, to put a new garage door on it. So with that said, we do have a call. Jerry.
Jerry, you are on with Mike and Victoria.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Jerry.
There's an ongoing show that's on the internet, on TV. It's called Homes, HOLMES, Homes Inspection. And I'll tell you, it brings a lot of things to light about home inspectors. terrible illustration of what they do and how it leaves the home buyer in a pickle after the home is sold. Might be interesting if y'all would look up, or if the home buyer would do some research.
Yeah.
Look up Mr. Holmes. He
I-
is,
I can agree with you on that, Jerry, because here's what happens with home inspections. All right. The home inspection is kind of like it takes a peek at the house. You can't see usually behind the walls. There are instruments to see the moisture behind the walls. It's better than having nothing. But the problem with home inspections are they're going to tell you what's right and what's wrong with the property today. Okay. It's going to tell you the air conditioner is working today. It's working great. When you buy that home next to the following week, it may or may not be working. There's no guarantees that these things are going to continue to work. And that's why I said you have to have a quality inspector to inspect these properties who knows what they're looking for, has experience and what goes wrong.
Okay, is that a good answer, Jerry?
somewhat.
Okay.
There is a lot of home inspectors who write just glory reports about a house, when in fact they haven't really looked at the house, and what they wrote was just not true. So buyer beware. Do your homework when it comes to a home inspector.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Jerry. I agree with you 150%. The only problems that we have is we cannot steer people and we can't make somebody use somebody. So all we can do is give 3 suggestions of who we feel are really good. So, I mean, I've run into problems where, I sold a home and her children felt, oh, if you ask the real estate agent, they're not going to give you the truth. They're just going to put you with somebody that wants to do a bad job so they can make a sale. And that's not true of all agents. Some agents do that. I mean, I've had home inspectors say to me that, there's been agents that asked them to not show some bad things in a home. I'm just the opposite. I'm too Italian. I got to know everything about it. But
thanks for the
but-
call, Jerry. I got a
Good.
question
Thank
for
you.
you, Victoria. Yeah, you guys were talking about home inspection and also the fact that is termite a different inspection from a home inspection?
Now, when you go for a home inspection, it's kind of like when you buy a car nowadays. Do you want the whole house inspected? Do you want to add the termite? Do you want to add the septic inspection? In a perfect world, I always suggest that you get the full Monty, the full inspection, get the termite reports, everything. And I would say that's particularly important on a frame house. Even though most houses have some wood in it, because you have the roof trusses. Even if you have a CBS house, you have wooden roof trusses. So you really need to take a look at termites, even in a concrete block house. In my
Well,
opinion.
there are termites that do eat into cinder block. There are types. I mean, and that was another thing that we had on our shows before is they talked about that. So I say 150% if you have a well, if you have you get your water tested, if that's your drinking water. If you have a septic, you make sure that you get a septic inspection. If you have you need to get a termite and you need to get a home inspection. And if there's any possibilities, now mold is a funny thing because, they do, everything has airborne mold in it, everything. We breathe that all the time. So, but if you actually think that there is black mold somewhere in that home, you definitely make sure you get that tested.
Victoria, I had an interesting buyer and he was a bit of a contractor. I mean, he wasn't a professional contractor, but he kind of knew enough to look around and see what was wrong. But his theory was interesting. He said, you know what, I'm not going to get a home inspection done on this property because just like Jerry said, some of these home inspectors, I mean, they just breeze through the house and they don't find things. Some are better than others, obviously. But what his theory was instead of getting a home inspection, I'm just going to buy a full home warranty for the first year. I'm going to cover everything that I could possibly cover. And this way, if the air conditioning goes out the day after the home inspector goes out, then I'm covered. The home warranty covers it. Now, home warranty doesn't cover everything. It usually doesn't cover structural items, but it would cover the basics that most people would have problems with, and that would be air conditioning units, appliances, pool pumps, that kind of thing. So that's a different avenue to pursue. Maybe if you're limited on funds and you can't afford both, maybe just get the home warranty, and at least the majority of the things are covered.
Yes, you can do that too. I'm still a little leery about that though. If you really do have a good home inspector, there could be some underlining things that you can't see, like you say, wouldn't be covered under that.
No, I agree with that. I would never
No, I don't
talk.
know. I get a little nervous with that.
Yeah, I would never talk anybody out of a home warranty, but there are home inspection, but there are certain types of properties that might benefit more from a home warranty than a home inspection. One would be a condo. In most things, the condo association would cover the exterior of the building, the roof, that type of thing, the structural aspect of the house, of the property. In that situation, maybe it would be a good thing just to get a home warranty on it, because then all the major appliances are covered. Just a thought.
Yes, that's true. And we did have one recently on a condominium because from the walls in is yours. Um, and it was renovated and it was beautiful and it was in great shape. But we did have some issues with the electrical box. So little things like with electricity kind of bothers me. So, and it did cost them like around $1,200, the seller, to fix some issues within that electrical box. The other
Yeah.
thing it had was, even though they did the shower, brand new, all of it. It wasn't draining properly because of the grade that they put in it. But other than that, everything else was pretty good, okay with it. But when it comes to electrical, I get a little nervous with electrical.
Yeah, and of course, if you want to avoid these issues altogether, you can just build a new house, and that's where a construction loan can come in. We do construction loans. There are a lot of lenders out there that have not gotten back into construction lending, but we have a 90% conventional construction loan. So if you want to avoid all these issues with older homes, you can just build a new one. 90%, so you have to put 10% down. The qualifying guidelines are a little tougher on construction loans because there's some extra risk involved. But conventional, 10% down, and on jumbo, and a jumbo loan for everyone, it's anything over and above the conforming loan limit. In our area right now, our conforming loan limit is $548,250. So it's very easy to get over and above that in a new construction market because prices have skyrocketed in the material cost. But so it's likely that if you're going to build a home, you might be in that jumbo category. We can do those at 80% financing. So 20% down on a jumbo loan, 10% down on conventional financing.
That's good. That's great. Mike, let's give our phone numbers. We're getting towards the end. And last week, I want to shout out to two people that called us after the show too, that we were able to help. So please, let's give out our numbers. Mike, go ahead and give yours out.
Sure, I could be reached 772-285-0315. Again, at 772-285-0315.
And I'm Victoria Loyd with Remax Stewart. And my number is area code 772-201-8740. That's 201-8740. That is my cell phone, and you can reach me at any time.
Yep. And just in closing, we seem to be in an upward tick on interest rates. So if you've been sitting around waiting for the rates to come down for refinancing, you might want to jump on that wagon right now because you could miss the boat. Interest rates have gone up pretty considerably over the last few weeks. They're still excellent. There's still an opportunity to save money. You could do cash out refinances, take some money out, pay some high interest rate credit cards. You haven't missed the boat, but the boat's leaving dock.
What are the interest rates now, Mike?
Well, the interest rates are going to vary depending on your qualifications. So, for the average person, you're probably going to be in the low 3% range now. As little as 2 months ago, we were in the middle twos, but now we're in the low threes. So it's time to push the button, get off your seat, get this thing, get your property refinanced if you're going to take advantage of these rates.
Any guess as to how high those things are going to go in the next year?
It really depends on inflation right now. I mean, you see that prices are going up, fuel costs are going up. There's a lot of money in the market right now with all the stimulus money. There's been a lot of people sitting around for a year not knowing what to spend their money on. So now they're going out there and spending it, and it's causing some inflation. There's some supply side issues too. There's a lot of people aren't back to work, and that's causing low inventory on products. Transportation's becoming an issue. We ordered a couch, a month and a half ago, and they said it's not going to come in until June. What's that do? It raises prices. So as prices go up, inflation goes up, interest rates go along with it. So as long as the upward pressure is on prices, then rates are going to go. Sky's the limit.
All right. Well, Victoria and Mike, thanks a million. Another great show. Mike Pollis from East Coast Mortgage, and of course, Victoria Loyd from Remax of Stewart. They'll be back again next week at 11 o'clock right here. PSL Port St. Lucie.